Heck yeah, The Hunger Games Catching Fire. We are very much on the road to the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and now we've come to this. Catching Fire is considered by many to not only be the best book entry, but also the best movie entry. Because this is a film that really leans into the darkness, and it really shows you a lot of the motivations of the villainous side of things in The Hunger Games. It's very akin to The Empire Strikes Back, which, surprise, surprise, many people consider it to be the best Star Wars movie. So after arriving safely home from their unprecedented victory in the previous Hunger Games, Katniss and Peeta discover that they must do a quick turnaround and begin a victor's tour, which is pretty up in its own right. They're basically going to each district and giving a pre-written speech to the families of the fallen tributes in the previous games. And as she and Peeta travel throughout the districts, Katniss senses that a rebellion is stirring. The games really never leave you. That's a big theme of Catching Fire. But President Snow proves that he is still very much in control when word comes of a cruel change in the rules for the upcoming 75th Hunger Games. And basically what this is, the Quarter Quell, is he's basically creating an all-star game. Only previous victors can go into the arena. Seeing as how there's only one female tribute of District 12, Katniss has to go in there by default. And Peeta basically volunteers to take her place after Haymitch's name is drawn. Yeah, in case you couldn't tell, the movie's a little over 10 years old, so there will be some spoilers in this review. You've been fairly warned. But I feel like what Catching Fire does so well in relation to the other two entries in the main Hunger Games series, you really hunker down on wanting to root for our heroes, because this is a really shitty situation. This is like the worst dystopian country you could find yourself living in. And when the government is very much against you because you're defying everything that they stand for, yeah, this is a crappy, crappy world. And I think this movie really captures the essence of what that original book was all about, while also adding in some pretty nifty little character traits in every single tribute that you meet. Because again, I feel like this is something this movie does better than the original. We get to know the other tributes surrounding Katniss and Peeta way more. Whereas the first movie had some interesting characters, there's a bunch of scared kids deep inside going into this arena. Every tribute this time around has won the Hunger Games before. So point being, this crop is filled with some lethal killers and some phenomenal strategists. And there's a great sense of unity in this movie shown between all the victors. That interview scene where everybody is holding their hands up, that will send shivers up and down my spine. And much like the first movie, Catching Fire does a great job at painting this vivid picture. Like, this is exactly how I imagined it when I read the book. The costume design, Katniss's beautiful wedding dress that she wears to that interview, right down to the swimsuits that these people actually wear when they're in the clock arena. The clock arena itself, oh my god, this was such a cool visual. And the movie also just looks better in general. Probably because you have Francis Lawrence coming in to direct this in place of Gary Ross. And all due respect to Ross, but I just feel like Francis Lawrence has a much better grasp on how to properly craft a movie from a directorial standpoint. Gone is all the shaky cam in the action sequences. You can see everything perfectly fine. Gone are the constant flip-flopping between tributes and gamekeepers. When you're in the arena, you are fully immersed in here, and you feel like you're really in the arena with Katniss and with Peeta. And let me tell you, even on a rewatch on this Blu-ray transfer, the fact that they shot all of the arena action sequences in full-on IMAX, going from widescreen into full screen format, it looks really good on my TV at home, I'll tell you that much. And I think the performances, once again, across the board, are all fantastic. Jennifer Lawrence just won an Oscar the previous year for Silver Linings Playbook, and she continues to prove as Katniss how great of an actress she really is. Because she is, again, so freaking real in this movie. The emotional range that she gets to explore, golly, it is something to see, man. And her chemistry with Josh Hutcherson as well, who is, once again, fantastic in this movie. Very likable and charming guy. But I also think they did a much better job at really illustrating that rough dynamic between Peeta and Katniss coming out of the first book. It's a really great arc when Peeta knows that Katniss is putting on an act. Fast forwarding to in the arena when Katniss is saying stuff like, I need you, and Peeta says, nobody needs me. That's some great romantic storytelling right there. Liam Hemsworth as Gale gets so much more to do. And even though this is very much leaning into the Twilight-isms, the love triangles, the teenagers back when this came out loved this movie because of the love triangle. I mean, I don't know. I liked The Hunger Games for the action and for the darkness and the drama and just the facts that we want to see these people get out of such a somber situation. But yeah, of course, it's a young adult novel, so you gotta have a love triangle. triangle in here, and that's what Gale is, basically. He's kissing Katniss when the cameras aren't rolling. But then again, you still feel for Gale's character when he's getting whipped in the town square. And my god, I mean, just getting into some of that haunting imagery, it's like Holocaust-like, where the peacekeepers are coming in and they're burning down people's homes in District 12. It is coming off very much like the Third Reich, like they're under a dictatorship, which is scary as hell. And yeah, speaking of scary as hell, President Snow, played by Donald Sutherland, this guy feels like he was born to play a politician. He was so freaking great. And Donald Sutherland was already a legend before The Hunger Games even was put out in theaters. He's got such an ice-cold presence anytime these cameras are on him. And he has such a phenomenal understanding of the assignment and what the character actually is. His scenes with Katniss, man, like, ugh. The scene at the beginning when they promise not to lie to each other and he hands her that white rose, just, ugh. Yeah, he's freaking great. Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks, everybody in this movie is phenomenal. Nobody gives a bad performance in here. And I love all the new characters that we get to meet, the new tributes. Jeffrey Wright plays a tribute from District 3 named Beatty, who is the brains of the Alliance. Joanna Mason, I think, is presented much better in the movies than in the books. And that elevator scene, man, like... like, she's got no filter, and Woody Harrelson and Josh Hutcherson's reactions to everything and her antics, like, that's exactly what that scene needed. But perhaps the best new tribute to come out of this crop is Finnick Odair, played by Sam Claflin. This guy seems like such a smug, cocky, arrogant little shit when you first meet him eating the sugar cubes right before the chariots are starting to go out and everybody's in costume for the parade. He's just munching on sugar cubes that the horses eat. And it turns out he's a really good ally for Katniss. Because the whole idea of this kind of civil war where half the tributes are with the Capitol and with President Snow's ideals for God knows what reason, half the tributes go into this version of the Hunger Games wanting to get Katniss out of the arena because they know that she's the symbol of the rebellion. And turns out that's exactly the case. Katniss basically blows up the whole dome and the force field and basically cuts off the feed to the games. She is picked up by Haymitch, by Finnick, and by Plutarch Heavensbee. Plutarch just might be the most interesting character from the books. And they got the late Philip Seymour Hoffman to play him. May he rest in peace. He was so freaking great in this, in what would tragically turn out to be his final film role of his life. And once that reveal happens that he is actually a mole put into the Capitol as the head gatekeeper, and he's actually working for the rebellion the whole time, it honestly makes all the scenes that he shares with President Snow, where they're basically behind closed doors and going over their strategies, and the fact that he's been wanting to keep Katniss alive, letting her get her hands dirty, that all makes perfect sense now. And of course, with this being the second entry in a trilogy of books, the second of 4 movies, you gotta end on a cliffhanger. And you have to end at a point where you just want to throw in Mockingjay Part 1 right away. When Gale basically tells Katniss there's no more District 12, we're taking you to 13, which everybody thought was non-existent at this point in time. Jennifer Lawrence's reaction is phenomenal at the end and cutting to black. And if you watch this in 2013, you had to wait a year to see how this would play out on the silver screen. If you read the books, I mean, you knew what was going to happen. But I think it's the wonderful craftsmanship of Francis Lawrence and his whole entire team. James Newton Howard, once again, his Hunger Games score is so freaking epic and phenomenal. And that's one other thing I wanted to mention. This movie definitely feels so much more epic than its predecessor. Not only because it feels like an all-star Olympic event, but you understand the gravity of the situation and the building rebellion that's coming out of this. I mean, my only real issue with Catching Fire is the love triangle, but other than that, I love the brooding darkness and the feel of this movie. I love how the actual Hunger Games action sequences are directed and presented this time. And once again, great performances across the board from everybody, not one weak link. Catching Fire is easily the best of the best in terms of Hunger Games, and I can in fact confirm, even 10 years later, this movie still slaps. I'm going to give The Hunger Games Catching Fire an A-. Yeah, this movie is pretty darn great, and if you haven't seen it in a while, I strongly encourage you to do so. Let me know what you thought of Catching Fire down in the comments section. Is this your favorite entry of Hunger Games movies and books? Lots that we can discuss over here in the build-up to Songbirds and Snakes. It's a great community of film lovers, geeks, and entertainment lovers alike, and y'all are invited to the party, of course. Do consider subscribing and tap on that thumbs up on your way out. That would be a humongous help. Stay tuned for more videos very soon in my next entry in this playlist for Mockingjay Part 1. That should be a really interesting look, and I can't wait to dig into that and all that much more with you guys. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much again for tuning in. And with all that being said, Back Talk, commence!